What's up guys, welcome to AnimeKouhai. If you'd like to help me out, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel.
However, dying was not an option.
Even if I could be revived, that would mean disobeying Rimuru-sama's orders. Carrera-sama would be furious, and I'd never forgive myself.
So, Esprit couldn't afford to die. At the same time, retreating from the front line was impossible, leaving her stuck in a no-win situation. This internal conflict caused her movements to slow. Peliod, not one to miss an opportunity, aimed her poisonous fangs at Esprit.
Don't just stand there.
Phobio kicked Esprit out of the way. Moments later, the spot where Esprit had been standing was blanketed in poisonous scales released by Peliod. The poison, though beautiful in its shimmering glow, was deadly enough to kill even demons. Its potency was so strong that it could corrode the body and destroy the spirit, leaving Esprit, despite her peerless demon rank, vulnerable.
Ow, that hurt, but thanks.
Phobio gave a light nod in response to Esprit's sincere thanks and quickly returned to his assault on Peliod. He unleashed a series of relentless claw strikes, scattering the numerous clones in his path. Even though it seemed pointless, given that they couldn't distinguish the real Peliod from the fakes, Phobio wasn't one to give up on brute force tactics.
Hey, you're weaker than me, so why haven't you just given up?
Esprit blurted out. She hadn't really expected an answer since the question seemed irrelevant. But to her surprise, Phobio responded with a bold laugh.
You're pretty blunt.
He replied.
But that's fine. If you survive, you can still win. As Geld-san said, it doesn't matter as long as you can survive and win the next time.
Essentially, they needed to keep fighting to gather any clues for moving forward, as Phobio saw it.
Yeah, I'm weak.
He added.
It's hard to admit, but I just have to do what I can.
Esprit found herself satisfied with Phobio's unexpectedly serious reply, and she couldn't help but agree.
I'm competitive too, but you're pretty impressive. I'll give you that, Black Leopard Fang Phobio.
Thank you, Esprit Dano.
You don't need to be so formal with me, you know.
I've messed up because of that before. Besides, I don't think we have time to be chatting so casually.
Unlike Esprit, Phobio was entirely focused on the battle. Even though he knew he couldn't win, he refused to back down, launching even more ferocious attacks on Peliod. His claws, driven by a jet-black wind, slashed through multiple clones, but they had little effect. But now, perhaps irritated by his persistence, Peliod finally retaliated. The scales swirled and shot towards Phobio like drills. Even the tiniest of these scales could become lethal weapons when combined. Phobio knew that if he was hit directly, his body would be shredded to pieces. He understood this danger better than anyone. The gap in power between them was undeniable, and confronting Peliod like this was practically suicide. However, like Esprit, he knew that if he didn't give his all, Carrera's defeat was inevitable.
If that's the case, then I have no choice but to go through with it, no matter how reckless it is. My life is a small price to pay if I can at least divert some attention like this.
Phobio took pride in being a beastketeer. Although the urge to flee was strong, doing so would mean losing Carrion's trust and betraying the subordinates who believed in him. He couldn't allow such a betrayal, and it was this conviction that drove Phobio forward. Phobio's combat style was centered around using his high mobility to harass his enemies and finish them off with his sharp claws. While his defense wasn't the strongest, his agility often made up for it. This time, his speed was the only thing keeping him alive. Even the slightest lapse in concentration could spell death, as they were already treading on a perilous tightrope. Esprit observed this closely.
Wasn't it Gabuya-san, Benimaru-sama's subordinate, who mentioned this? I always thought Phobio was just some odd guy who talked non-stop about his love life with his girlfriend, but he really steps up when it counts. Unlike demons, who can be revived even after death, he's a fragile being who won't come back if he dies.
From Esprit's perspective, even Phobio, who had risen to become one of the most formidable among the greater Majin, still seemed fragile. Esprit was a greater demon, part of an elite group, and a follower of Carrera, one of the Demon King pillars. For her, death wasn't an end but more like hitting the continue button in a game, so she didn't really have a true sense of danger. Depending on the severity of the damage she suffered, she could end up in a deep sleep for hundreds of years, but for demons who lived eternally, that was merely a blink of an eye. This was why Esprit found herself fascinated by those who lived their limited lives to the fullest. In comparison, what about herself? Whenever she faced a problem, her master Carrera would handle it and she could just pass the issue onto her colleague Agera. Until now, Esprit had never experienced real desperation.
Could it be that I'm actually more useless than Phobio-san?
No. Something deep within Esprit's heart screamed that this couldn't be true. Perhaps it was her true feelings resurfacing, the ones that hated to lose, something she had almost forgotten. As if proving this, Esprit, who had nearly given up, stood up with renewed determination. This time, it wasn't just out of fear of disobeying orders by dying, now she genuinely wanted to win, and that desire shone clearly in her eyes. However,
Honestly, beating her isn't realistic, is it? So, Phobio-san, let's make this as difficult for her as possible.
Esprit was still a practical realist, so she didn't entertain any wild fantasies about winning. She calmly considered what was necessary for a tactical victory.
Do you have a plan?
Phobio asked with a smile. Sensing the change in Esprit's attitude, he realized that their chances of success had improved, even if only slightly.
You can't win by attacking head-on. That's why, even if it's a bit underhanded, how about making a deal with the devil?
Esprit suggested. Even now, scales were grazing Phobio, and his body was covered in an increasing number of ultrafine cuts. It was only a matter of time before the poison would reach his body, which would mark the end for him. Despite the situation, he laughed.
Another deal. But I don't have time to be picky, do I? Alright, what's this deal with the devil?
Phobio still remembered the bitterness of being tricked by Footman and the others in a previous deal. Nevertheless, he had already decided and was ready to accept her offer.
It's a simple one.
Esprit replied casually.
Tell me your wish, and in exchange, I'll take your soul.
Demons fed on human souls, whether large or small, so they were well versed in making such contracts. They were experts in all kinds of magic to fulfill any wish. However, this was a skill reserved for veteran demons who had survived since ancient times, not for newly born ones. Needless to say, for Esprit, this was just a basic trick she could perform without much effort.
I understand. I trust you, Esprit Dano, so I'll take the deal.
Even as his right arm was ground into fine dust, Phobio agreed without so much as a groan of pain. Upon hearing this, Esprit smiled.
That's good. If you had hesitated even a little, I wouldn't have been able to make it in time.
In fact, Esprit had already started her preparations even before Phobio responded.
And so, my wish is...
The power to get through this.
Esprit nodded and initiated the demonic contract to fulfill Phobio's wish. In that instant, the gateway to Phobio's soul opened as the payment, allowing Esprit to enter. She hesitated briefly before leaving her physical body behind, cutting off any remaining doubt. Then, in her true form as a spiritual life form, she merged with Phobio's soul. This was the intrinsic skill, possession, a unique trait of the demon race. It was sometimes used to take control of the body of someone who had made a contract, and in this case, its purpose was somewhat similar.
I really didn't want to resort to this method. Leaving the wonderful body that Rimuru-sama gave me on the battlefield like this is hard to believe.
What's happening here?
Stay calm. We're in the middle of a crisis right now, but we've slowed time down more than 1,000,000 times over with thought hyperacceleration.
Esprit's calm voice gave Phobio a moment to grasp the situation. It did feel as though the world had frozen, as if time itself had stopped.
I get it now. So this is what the world looks like to those at the top.
As for me, I still have a long way to go. Carrera-sama is said to be about 100,000,000 times faster, so even ritual magic that usually takes years can be performed instantly.
That's incredible.
It was more than incredible, it was a whole other level beyond Phobio's understanding. Ignoring Phobio's awe and confusion, Esprit continued to explain.
We have plenty of time now, so listen carefully. I've left my physical body and returned to my original spiritual form to merge with you. Normally, I'd take over the host and use their power as my own, but there's a process to that, and honestly, it wouldn't make me much stronger.
Phobio was skilled in physical combat, especially in close quarters. His abilities had greatly improved after training with Midley. On the other hand, Esprit had only recently started practicing swordsmanship as a hobby. Peliod specialized in magic, and while Esprit could counter some of it, she would eventually be defeated. So, she decided to let Phobio take the lead. However, this didn't mean she would be idle.
I've merged with you so we can combine our strength.
What do you mean?
You should keep focusing on evasion. As it was, you would have been dead in 5 minutes. But if we combine our powers...
Esprit, through the demon's contract, had decided to lend all of her power to Phobio.
If I use that power, do you think I can beat her?
Phobio's instincts told him it wouldn't be that easy. And he was right.
She's not someone you can defeat with just that. She seems to have a stronger vision than I do.
Peliod also had compound eyes that could read all kinds of information. It was her keen awareness of the flow of magicules that allowed her to reflect any form of magic. This became evident when Peliod deflected Carrera's Abyss Annihilation in her first move. This feat alone showed that Peliod had superior skill in handling magic compared to Esprit. Naturally, her thought acceleration was also more advanced than Esprit's.
So, what's the plan?
You'll do everything in your power to stay alive. Of course, you won't be doing it alone. I'll be helping you too.
While Phobio focused on close combat, Esprit planned to support him with her magic. The idea was to lessen the impact of Peliod's attacks on Phobio, though there was no guarantee it would work.
I get it. We're trying to boost our chances of survival as much as we can.
Exactly. Our goal here is to survive until someone stronger arrives who can defeat her. And if we can keep her distracted and away from Carrera-sama, we'll have done our job.
Phobio nodded in agreement.
So basically, we're just buying time, right?
It's our only option. There's a significant gap in our abilities, so we don't have much choice. But don't worry. According to my calculations, we should be able to hold out for 20 minutes.
That's really comforting. I don't feel reassured at all.
Phobio thought, but he couldn't help but laugh. But he pressed on. As much as he hated to admit it, Phobio knew he was weak. He had resolved to fight in the only way the weak could and would do everything in his power to make that work. And so, the battle entered its second phase.
A big thanks to the AnimeKouhai patrons who made this video possible. Jared Bressler, Havox, Speed Saber, Curtis Loban, Judah Herrera, Just a Guy, Miss L.W. Hernandez, Jason Martin, Zach Rosen, Jerry Sladek, Ray Perez, Jay, Donald Williams, Moab A, Day of Light, John M, Godman Gaming, Markithian Tidwell, Adrian, Kumo, Sanketh Chelu, T. Bush, JV, Thomas, Christ, Joshua Cousins, Jose Hernandez, Khalid, Christian Deshazer, Divine C. Harris, Montyboy98, Ruben, Yuki Iki, Gray, Kemal Ebanks, Isaac, Koala King 93, Quilly Buckner, Alver, Normal Defate, Vicente Baharias, Joshua Andrade, L, Gary Miles, Dragon Spawn 666, J. Rule, Leiron Sangkap, Lucas Guet, Jason Martin, Ekotski, Sky T, Diego Ginoza, Andre Hamilton, Martin Ramos, Guy Ensley, Simon Rode, Emperor WSA, Miko Espinosa, George Hage, Pratik Bandari, Jackson Early, Smexy, Carl Stephen Bernadel, Gareth Hashimoto, Steven Madison, Vasta Lord, Marl Barsha, Ralph Ignacio, Efrain Hernandez, William Locke, Kamal Luke, Spencer Candila, Ian Sikibiol, Thanacorn Lee Sawat, KACP9R, The Harv, Drayden Yamauchi, Alex Buthan, Nathaniel Johnson, Michael Brinkley, Elijah Pierre, Michael Stern. Thank you so much for helping out. I'll see you guys in the next video.